blah, 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 blah. Hi, it's Georgiana from ADORNit, and this is our Getting Started with Embroidery and also our Frequently Asked Questions video. So we have everything about all of our embroidery here in one video that you can refer back to. So thank you so much for purchasing one of our embroidery kits or becoming part of our embroidery stitch club. So if you are part of our embroidery stitch club, we frequently get asked, what is your processing time for shipping? So we have a small team and a lot of subscribers. So our processing time is about 2 to 3 weeks. And it usually, if we're really busy, is closer to the 3-week processing window. So that's for your first order, so you can kind of go by that. Once you've received your first order in your Stitch Club, then it goes into our batch shipping, which then that is shipped at the end of every single month. So all those clubs are shipped out in batches, and it makes it really fast and easy for our team to quickly get you your pattern. You'll be looking in the mailbox for an envelope that comes to you from us at ADORNit, and inside will be your stitch pattern that will be packaged into a nice little bag like this. Make it really simple and easy for you to get started. Our stitch clubs are shipped letter rate, so once it leaves our warehouse at the end of each month, it still takes around 10 more business days for the mail to send those letter rate. So just make sure you look forward to that time frame every month, and then they're going to regularly come every 30 days for your yearly subscription until you're done. Our patterns are printed onto a wash-away stabilizer, which makes it so simple and easy to use. So when you receive your first pattern, whether it's in a stitch club or it's a pattern that you purchase on our adornit.com site and it's not part of a club, this is what it's going to look like. So you'll open up your poly bag, and then you'll have your pattern and your stitch guide. So the stitch guide is important because it shows you what the finished project should look like. And then when you open it inside, we give you a stitch guide that tells you which threads, the item number and the color, and then also which stitches to use. So it gives you a great guide. Now you can always do your own thing, add your own stitches and be creative, or you can follow along what we have. Either way, you're going to end up with a beautiful embroidered piece. We're frequently asked, what do I stitch my embroidery onto? And guess what? Anything you want, you can stitch onto. So whether it's clothing, whether it's fabric for a quilt, or a tea towel, which is always a popular option, you can do embroidery. So we frequently use our cotton fabric, which we have so many fun different designs available in the cotton fabric on adornit.com. So typically we use a light colored fabric, but you will even see us using colored fabric every once in a while because it's a lot of fun to experiment and try new things. Plus, one of our most popular items that women love stitching on are tea towels. So you know what? There's no rules. You can stitch on whatever you want to stitch on. Now that you've chosen which background fabric you're going to want to stitch on, it's important that you have pre-washed your fabric and you want to make sure you iron it. So you can see this piece of fabric here. This is my background fabric that I'm going to be using, and you can see it has creases in it. So make sure that you have a smooth piece of fabric because your embroidery won't come out nicely if you have creases in it. It's going to distort your stitching. So make sure, no matter what it is that you're stitching onto, that you've ironed it smooth. So now you can see this is nice and smooth, and I'm ready to embroider. Now we're ready to apply our pattern, and there's just 3 things you need to remember. You peel, stick, and stitch. It's as simple as that. No, you don't iron on your pattern, and you don't have to trace your pattern. It saves you so much time. So you're going to take your pattern and you're going to separate the top from the bottom. You can see this is a paper backing piece, and then this is our stabilizer piece that will wash away when we're done stitching. So all you do is you peel your pattern and then you carefully stick it onto your background fabric. Now, if you accidentally put it down crooked or anything like that, it's a really low tack adhesive, so it's easy to peel back up before you start stitching and reposition it if you need to. So there we go. We're ready to start stitching now because we peel, stick, and stitch. We frequently get asked if we use embroidery hoops when we use our stitching, and my answer is always yes. I feel like embroidery hoops make your fabric tension really nice and allows your stitching to turn out better. And there's a lot of really great hoops out on the market. I personally don't love stitching with a wood hoop. I feel like your fabric slips a lot. And so my personal favorite is an ADORNit hoop that we sell from our website. And the reason why I like it is because it has a gripping notch on the bottom that allows your fabric to really kind of lock in and be tight. So all you have to do is separate your hoop, put your bottom piece below your fabric, and then you have your top hoop that will have a screw, and you need to loosen that and then place it on top of your embroidery like this. And then you will want to position it so that it locks in that hoop. And you want to choose a hoop that's going to have a good area. So this is like a 7-inch hoop for my larger embroidery. If it's a smaller embroidery piece, I'll go with a smaller hoop. And then all you need to do is tighten with the screw so that your fabric is nice and tight. You don't want it to be loose, and you don't want to be too tight that you're going to stretch your fabric too much and then have your stitching come out distorted as well. So you just want a nice tight piece of fabric without getting it too tight. You'll kind of be able to hear the tension, and that means you've got a good piece of fabric in there and you're ready to stitch. Embroidery needles. This one is a big one that we are very passionate about. You need to have a nice sharp embroidery needle when you're working with any embroidery project. Now, if you go to the craft store, a big box store, and you see a package of embroidery needles and they're like a multi-pack and they kind of have dull tips, you don't want those. You want to make sure that you're using nice embroidery sharp needles. That's the key word, a sharp embroidery needle. We actually prefer a crewel embroidery needle. It's really nice and sharp. And then the size makes a big difference when you're working with your embroidery. So our favorite size is a size 6, but you can experiment. We have customers that use around a 5, 6, or 7. Those tend to be the most popular sizes. You can also choose to purchase our ADORNit needles, which our Stitch Club fans love and rave about because they are really nice and sharp. Now, when you're working with your pattern, we get asked a lot, you know, my needle gets stuck in there. It's hard for me to pull them out. It's really hard on my fingers. And my answer is always make sure you're using a sharp embroidery needle, because your needle should be able to glide in and out of your fabric and your stitch pattern very easily. If your needle does get a little bit sticky, it's probably time to change your needle and get a new one. You can also try using a little bit of rubbing alcohol on there. And here's the tip: don't put your needle in your mouth as you're doing in between your stitches, because I think a lot of women tend to do that, and that gets your needle sticky, and then because you're putting a wet needle in your pattern, making the adhesive activate, making your needle sticky. So there's some tips on how to not get your needle sticky, and also make sure you're using a sharp needle to make it glide in and out of that fabric. Okay, so those are some of my must-have when you're stitching. We talked about our hoop, we talked about our needles. Now, I do a lot of stitching, and I know your fingers can start to get sore, so I definitely recommend using a thimble. But guess what my favorite thing is? There are these really neat thimble pads that we sell in our shop. They are a leather sticker that you can actually just peel and stick onto your finger. Let me show you how cool these are. So you can get them in a pack like this, and they're reusable. I can reuse this several times. So it's a leather patch, and I put it onto my middle finger like that, and that allows me to keep from getting blisters or getting my fingers sore as I'm stitching. So that for me is a must-have. And then when I'm done, I just simply peel it off my finger and I put it right back onto my hoop. So when I'm ready to start stitching again, I have it right there and I'm ready to go. The other thing that is a must-have in your embroidery stitching is a pair of embroidery scissors. This will make it really easy to cut your floss and thread your needle. So those are my must-haves when you're starting your embroidery stitching. When you're looking at your embroidery instructions, you will notice that we reference Sulky embroidery floss. So that is the brand of floss that we use in all of our embroidery stitching. You don't have to use this brand. You can use any brand of embroidery floss that you desire because it's going to work great with our patterns. It's just they are a fantastic company that we love working with, and we love the quality of their embroidery floss. So that is what we reference. Now, their floss comes on a spool, which is different. And so some people think it's normal sewing thread, but it's not. It's an embroidery floss. It's a 12-weight cotton embroidery floss. So these are not included in the patterns. It's an additional add-on. So if you're part of our stitch clubs, we have an add-on for every club with all the thread that you're going to need for that club. It makes it really simple to just add that onto your order so you have all the colors that you're going to need. But like I said, any embroidery floss is going to work. That's just the brand of floss that we absolutely love working with. Now you're ready to embroider your design. You'll notice a lot of our embroidery patterns call for very simple embroidery stitches. We love keeping it simple and easy, so it's great for beginners as well as really fun for advanced embroiderers. Our patterns are color-coded, so you can see which colors you're going to want to use. I love that because it makes it really simple at a glance. You can see what you're going to be doing. And then you'll just come up, and if you're going to do a back stitch, you'll see how easy it is to just glide right through this fabric and stitch through. Now, we have on our YouTube channel all of our favorite basic embroidery stitches how-tos. So if you're looking for a particular stitch that's called for in our patterns, check out our YouTube channel for those embroidery stitches so we can teach you how to do them. When you're all done finished with your embroidery, then it's time to dissolve that peel and stick pattern away. It's like magic. So my favorite thing to do is to use my tap. I just put it on lukewarm water and I'll put my pattern under it and let it dissolve. Or you can take and you can get a bowl and you can fill it with lukewarm water and then apply your stitchery. And you're just gonna let that water soak onto that stabilizer and you'll watch it magically start to disintegrate and disappear, only leaving your beautiful hand embroidery. It's really like magic and makes it so fun and simple and easy to watch. Now you can see my pattern has disintegrated and it's just going to keep on disintegrating. It's not going to clog your drains. It's not going to do anything like that. It will completely dissolve away. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take out your embroidery. And what I like to do is I like to take a dry tea towel and I like to place my embroidery on it. And then I like to roll my embroidery up to give it a nice squeeze, just very gently, so that you don't twist your fabric too much to get out the excess moisture. Then what you're going to want to do is get your iron and a wool mat. Now the reason why I love a wool mat is because it's a natural fiber that is so good for your embroidery pressing. It makes such a difference. When I have customers ask me, you know, I've ironed my stitchery and it still just comes out not quite as crisp as yours, I say, have you used a wool mat? The reason why is because not only when you put your heat on top, so you put your embroidery face down like this, right? And then you take your iron and you heat it from the top, you're adding heat on top. But since it's the wool mat and it's natural fibers, it's also heating underneath, which makes your fabric really crisp and it allows your embroidery stitches to have a nice cushion as you're ironing so that your stitches just come out so nice and crisp. It makes such a beautiful difference. You'll be so glad that you have one. So we sell these ADORNit mats on our website And the reason why we have them 12 by 12 is because it makes it really easy to store, and you can see that it fits our sizing perfectly, because most of our embroidery blocks are always like a 12 by 12. So you can see how nice and easy that is to use your wool mat. Now, another question we're frequently asked is about thread bleed, okay? So here's an important tip if you're worried about your thread bleeding. When you get your fabric wet, so you saw how we dissolve the pattern, okay? You can use a vinegar rinse. You can take your bowl and put your pattern in it and put a vinegar rinse in there. The vinegar can help with your thread so that it won't bleed. Another great tip that we frequently tell customers is to use a Shout color catcher. They're these sheets that you can buy in the laundry aisle. And so you can take your bowl, take a Shout color catcher sheet, and put that in the bowl with your embroidery as it is rinsing, and that will pull out any excess dye from your thread. So it's important that you are rinsing your pattern well to get out any excess dye, because that is common with your embroidery floss to have that dye, and so you want that to release as you're dissolving your pattern. Now, the other thing is that when you take your embroidery out of the water, your fabric is wet and your thread is wet, right? So it is common for your thread color to leach onto that fabric because it's wet. So I always give the tip that you want to quickly dry your fabric and not leave it laying around wet, allowing those threads to leach out onto your fabric. So the sooner that you can get it onto your wool mat and get an iron onto it, the faster it will dry and have less chance of that thread leaching that color and bleeding onto your fabric. So that's a great tip to help alleviate thread bleed. Thank you so much for supporting our small family-owned company. We're so grateful to each and every one of you, whether you're just buying a single pattern off of our ADORNit.com site, or you're part of one of our Stitch Clubs, or many of them, like lots of our Stitch Club members are subscribed to lots. We are grateful for each one of you for supporting us. Now, if you have any questions or you're wondering about order status, any of those things, please send us an email. Our email is info@adornit.com, and we'd love to hear from you and love to be able to help you there. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here, and go check out our embroidery stitches if you're having questions about how to do a certain stitch. So thanks so much for joining.